Welcome back, Red Spotters. Measuring in the Red Spotlight Podcast. I'm your host today, Alexis J. Soto, joined by Mr. Peter Martinez and David Francisco. Back here, episode 273. Continuing our horror-themed month, this is going to be our review of The Haunting of Bly Manor, which is a Netflix original series. The anthology Haunting series. We did the first season, which was Hill House, a few weeks back, to a lot of great fanfare here. We, loved it universally across the board. And of course, Bly Manor dropped on Netflix this past weekend, and here we are, reviewing all 9 episodes for Bly Manor. At this point, I am going to toss it over to Peter Martinez, who is our wonderful narrator in catching us all up on what exactly this show is, which is, I believe, pulled from different works, at least where Bly Manor was inspired from.
Different works from Henry James. I would still say
Yes.
inspired as well, although this story sticks a little more closely than Haunting did of Hill House. So, The Haunting of Bly Manor. This description is brought to you by Letterboxd, where their slogan is, "If it's here, you're damn sure it's a movie." Okay.
The slogan, which, by the way, is currently in court and being challenged, by the way, so that's not necessarily the case. We have to be transparent about our sponsor currently in court being sued for that particular tagline.
The Supreme Court will rule in their favor, don't worry. After an au pair's tragic death, Henry Wingrave hires a young American nanny to care for his orphaned niece and nephew who reside at Bly Manor with the estate's chef Owen, groundskeeper Jamie, and housekeeper Miss Gross. But all is not as it seems at the manor, and centuries of dark secrets of love and loss are waiting to be unearthed in this chilling gothic romance. At Bly Manor, dead doesn't mean gone. So, The Haunting of Bly Manor. Technically, maybe, but not really, somewhat of a follow-up to The Haunting of Hill House. Written and only directed for the first little chunk of it by Mike Flanagan.
Well, just to be clear, you're right, but just to drive that emphasis home, Mike Flanagan is the creative force, otherwise known as the showrunner, which is what a television show's equivalent to a director is, of the creative control of the series.
Okay, because when I look at the under the crew, as you would under Letterboxd, it has writer and producer and director, but I don't see showrunner.
Well, that's why Letterboxd is a little iffy, and that's why they're currently being sued, because that is a little bit of a what would you call it? False advertising, because this is a television show, right? And television shows.
But I mean, as we know, they will win that case. So all's well in love and war. As I was saying, The Haunting of Bly Manor. It is very different than The Haunting of Hill House, Flanagan's previous work. I kind of don't want to go first as far as discussing it. I don't know if I could throw it back to you guys.
Well, we'll have plenty of time to hash that out, but I guess do you think it's relevant to start first off with the reception as far as how people are reacting to this, or is that better?
Well, see, that's the thing, though. I felt like if I talk about the reception, I'm gonna have to talk about how I feel. You know what I mean?
To be honest with you, and I don't know if you feel this way, Peter. I don't know how we're all going to fall along these lines with how we what we thought of this season. I want to say first and foremost, Alexis Moreno was supposed to be on here. She really wanted to be on this episode, but unfortunately there were scheduling conflicts and her workload has been swamped lately. So she's not here. She's not dead.
I was gonna say something, but I thought that would go too far. I was gonna say she drowned in a lake, but then
Oh my God.
No, that's not what happened. She really wanted to be here, but things have unfortunately gotten away from her. So she's working on that right now. So covering that in case people were wondering, where's Alexis Moreno? And it's like, and we imagine if we went the entire recording, never addressed her absence, that would be...
She was never here.
Yeah, she never was the entire time. Okay, I'm going to see if I can sum it up as concise as I can about what I thought about this.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, I kind of loved it. Not without its, I would say, noticeable drawbacks if you're going to directly compare this to Hill House.
Mm-hmm.
Which I have to say this, because we have a history on this podcast and we're reviewing follow-ups in a franchise or something about, comparing it to its immediate predecessor. And I've gone on the record as saying, well, and others have gone on the record as saying, well, it's not really fair. And I get that, and I've said that, and then I also feel, and others feel like, well, you can't help because you're trying to gauge how well this one was, and you look at the other thing. It is a weird, I think, combination. I think there are spots where this kind of exceeded Hill House in terms of emotion, perhaps, and I think there was clearly a tonal difference between Hill House and Bly Manor. In particular, I would say the endings were very different, I think, in tone with what they were going for, I feel. And again, I say that not, I think, as a criticism, but just as a clear thing that was different between the two of them. My issues, I think, with... Overall, I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the performances, all of the wonderful horror theatrics of what there was, the aesthetic. The music was great as always. I think the direction, for the most part, was good. I think the parts where the season kind of suffered was perhaps between episodes 2 and 3 or 2 and 4, where it felt as if there were noticeable pacing issues. I felt myself, I think in episode 3 or 4, I can't remember which one, getting a little wondering, okay, what's happening here? Where are we going with this? And so it felt perhaps maybe in one of the episodes, I can't recall which one, it felt as if not much of note was occurring. And that was the moment where I began to feel, it's interesting. Usually a lot more would have happened by now. But then, not long after, things are set in motion and we get to the inevitable places where all the crazy, batshit insane things happen. And so I think on that level, it delivered, at least for me anyway, on an entertaining standpoint, a lot of the crazy fun things that were revealed later on. So I think it still had that magic, at least for me, that, I felt with Hill House. Ultimately, they're very different stories. This is kind of a love story. And, for this being a horror oriented series, it may have been more appropriate to have this on Valentine's Day. Of course, it's kind of a sad love story. So there's that. But ultimately, it is emotional. It is beautiful. And I am overwhelmingly just in awe of the things that, Mike Flanagan can produce, even when it's not his personal touch, but obviously him guiding the creative force of it. I will say, I think, and this is unfair, I think, for me to say, but will say it. The biggest, I think the hardest thing for me is that I am just, as much as I think the series was successfully able to make me care about these characters, I can't say that they were able to make me care about them as much as Hill House and that wonderful ensemble made me care about all of them. And that may just be coming down to a personal preference of, what it is. But if the question is, was there a noticeable deficiency in quality? I don't think there was, aside from maybe perhaps the fact that Flanagan didn't direct every episode and didn't write every episode. I think, we didn't, anticipate that. And Peter had told me that he didn't know that until like an hour before. And he was like, oh no, where are we going with this? And perhaps there may have been some sacrifices that were made because of that. But overall, I was happy with how this series ended. And happy in terms of the quality. Of course, the ending was very sad. So I hope that made things clear to an extent. David, you want to go next?
I don't know if it was concise, but you kind of hated it. So David, what did you think?
Oh my God.
No, I agree with a lot of what Alexa said. I really did like the show and all. Ultimately, I did enjoy Hill House better. But that's mostly because, again, like Alexa said, like the first few episodes, I really had no idea as to where this show was going. Like, it wasn't until, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 where it just kind of like, it completely switched. And I went, okay.
It popped after.
Yeah, it really popped. And I knew, like, okay, this is kind of where we're going. It's like, I finally know the mystery of the show almost. Whereas, like, in the beginning of Hill House, like, exactly, like, okay, this is what we're trying to figure out. This is what we're going to lead to and all that. And that was the best thing about Hill House. What I think maybe I did enjoy a bit more in Bly Manor is that I actually do enjoy the characters in this one more, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, especially, like, I don't know. Mike Flanagan, he did it again where he just got great casting in this, especially the kids in the show. Oh my God, they're great. And I mean, like, yeah, I guess I kind of just, and I did just enjoy the ending too. Again, it was sad, but I think that's kind of necessary for the show.
Okay. So that's interesting. You took a more, what do you call it? Complex approach, when compared to Alexis's, brutal bashing that he gave Bly Manor. It's interesting. See, if anyone out there is listening to this, what you don't get who enjoy about these things, which for me is half the fun of making them, is whenever I make comments like that, the look on Mr. Alexis Soto's face is worth every second of it. Oh my God, it's hilarious. Very, very funny. He's doing it right now. Okay, so how did I feel about the Haunting of Bly Manor?
Accents. A lot of accents. Be warned.
Tally ho. Oh, I'm British. Oh, it's Scottish. I can't do accents. Like Mr. Alexis Soto had said, I had not known that he had only directed basically 1/8 of Bly Manor before going into watching it, and it got me just a little, 1/9, and it got me very, very worried, but then I thought about it, and then I realized it kind of makes sense, but it still worried me. He was kind of
working on something else, right? At the same time as this?
Yes, but going back and listening, because I did listen to a lot of behind the scenes stuff and a lot of interviews with Mike Flanagan, And if you've ever heard him talk about making Hill House, he talks as if he's a war veteran. Like, Hill House very much was his Vietnam. He says how, like, beforehand, he always thought it would be great to do something like this. And as they were in the writing process, they just started, like, what if we do this? And what if we throw in this? And he's like, basically everything he ever wanted to do with his career, he just thought, like, like, we'll throw in a slice of that, some of that here, another of that there. And he talks about how during the filming it was like 100-day shoot. He basically doubled his entire filming history in one shot. As far as like actively on set filming, he lost 45 pounds during the process. And he says this with complete sincerity, because he said, like, a lot of people think I'm joking. I'm not joking. I thought this thing was going to kill me. Like, I thought there was a good chance I was going to die making this. And whenever you hear, even in passing, you hear him talk about it, he's like, it's wonderful. I love it. It was like some of the greatest stuff in my entire career. I hope I never do it again.
Well,
that's the way he's talked about Hill House.
Dang.
So then,
it makes a lot of sense, though, real quick. It makes a lot of sense because this is kind of why in the world of television, there are showrunners who are the creative force and who head the writer's room. But this is probably perhaps why they don't write and direct every single episode of a TV show, because it is a much longer production than it is filming a movie.
Mm-hmm. Well, because it's like an 8-hour movie without a showrunner. Right. It's a writer and a director, and then that's it. Mm-hmm. Because he still wrote Bly Manor. Mm-hmm. He just couldn't do all the directing duties. And I think I looked up who the other directors were.
Well, there were also all the writers, to be clear. There was a writer's room, and aside from the directing of it. So,
well, not a writing room. He wrote it with his usual people.
His people. Yeah.
And the other directors, film directors, he picked.
I know one of them. Syrian Foy.
Huh?
Syrian Foy. I have the list right here if you wanted to, of the directors. There's Liam Gavin. Mm-hmm. Syrian Foy, Yolanda Ramp and Ben Howling, Axel Carolyn, E.L. Katz. I don't know these names, but these are the directors of the other episodes.
They've all worked on other horror films. None of them to the same level of like Flanagan, obviously, but they do have a history in horror filmmaking. I know one of them directed like Sinister 2. So yeah, they all have it. But as you know, as have all of you said this already, it does feel different than Hill House. And I think Hill House was just it was incredible, Mm-hmm. He really did give his entire self to making that piece of art, and I think it shows, and I think that's why it stands out. Whereas with this, he definitely took a more slightly more hands-off approach, and it's different. For one, I'll mirror what everyone else is saying. I don't think it's as good, and I do feel, and yes, I'll say it, I feel if he directed the entire thing, it would have been better, because there are. Can
I just say real quick though, Peter, to give I don't want to cut you off, but this is important about the production.
You always say it, but then you do, so it's okay.
But it's important though. And I get to do it because I'm hosting here. Okay, so sit back a little bit. So, The Haunting of Bly Manor entered production September 30th, 2019. Dr. Sleep wasn't in theaters until November, and I would assume he would still be editing that movie or in some kind of a post-production job in September of 2019, if not most of October. And the production didn't wrap until the 21st of February. So I can kind of see with that calendar, and that's just production. That doesn't include pre-production, why Flanagan was not able, like physically able, to just do the entire thing.
And then also writing, right? Because it seems like with Hill House, he had all the not all the time in the world, but he was devoted to this, and it was all about making this work. Writing, directing, everything, boom, all of himself thrown into it. Whereas with Bly, that was with Hill House. With Bly Manor, it's one, I know how difficult it is, and I kind of never want to do that again. I'll definitely write, but I don't have as much time to write, and I don't. Not only do I have shorter amount of time, but I have much busier guy. I can direct, but I can only direct. I don't know, just barely anything of it. So, gonna have to bring other people in to direct the rest. So, yeah. I think when you put that all together, obviously it's not gonna be as good piece of art, I feel. I think that's gonna be and he tweeted that when Hill House dropped, he was on set filming Dr. Sleep, and when Bly Manor dropped, he's currently on set again filming probably another film. I don't know what though.
He's busy.
Yeah, he's a busy boy, and for good reason. I want to see more of his shit. So, but I will say, I did enjoy Bly Manor, and I enjoyed it a lot. By the end, it did emotionally hit me somewhat, and it left a mark on me for some time afterwards that I saw it, and I thought, to do that, it is obviously something that's not easy, so to speak. That's kind of the goal of art, but it's not. That's the hardest part as well. It's definitely different. A lot of people have said, like, well, the Hill House was a gothic horror and Bly Manor is a gothic romance. Yes, I would agree. And again, I appreciate that. I appreciate that it didn't come back and try to replicate what Hill House was. I appreciate that it went in a completely different direction and tried to be its own thing. And its successes, when the successes that are there, I feel are much greater because of that. And I also feel that the negatives that are there are a bit more forgiving because, again, they did try to do something unique and not just replicate the same thing. We'll obviously get into it more as we discuss everything, but there are instances within the show where I felt like, yeah, if Flanagan were directing this whole thing, I feel like this would have been portrayed better, or this could have been done slightly better. So yeah, I do feel if he had just directed the whole thing, it would be better. And I might point to a few things here and there.
The only thing though,
complete involvement.
The only thing though that so him directing all of Hill House, the thing though is I feel like that kind of affected the ending of Hill House because he directed the entire thing. And I feel like that would have happened the same thing with Bly Manor, because you said in Hill House review that he wanted to change the ending because he loved these characters too much, and I think I
was thinking the same thing too.
And like him directing Hill House, like he finally connected with these characters on a deeper level because he's like seeing the entire process, probably editing it at the same time or something, and like he's seeing in his head like, oh my gosh, these characters are great, and like his work come to life. And I think that is a one good thing about him not directing all of Bly Manor, is because who knows what he could have done differently once he like sees the process.
That is one of I feel one of the things that I've noticed on social media over the weekend when it came to people talking about the differences between Manor and House. And I feel, and honestly, I think maybe perhaps from a more thematic standpoint, Bly Manor might have had the better ending than Hill House.
I agree.
Is that kind of where you're going with, David?
Yeah, I agree with that. The ending, I still love the ending of Hill House, obviously, but I do agree with what Peter said, though, is that it kind of did seem it went to a different direction than what was intended. And with Bly Manor, though, it makes complete sense where it ended.
It's also, like I mentioned earlier, just completely tonally different.
Mhm.
Whereas in Hill House, it is, I think, overwhelmingly a sense of joy. Here, there's an overwhelming sense of melancholy. It's bittersweet.
Mhm.
I think,
I think
go ahead.
I just to what David said. I think that runs on you run on the assumption that Mike Flanagan would have changed the ending. Neither of us can know for sure if,
Right.
maybe he would have changed the ending. I have a sneaking suspicion he wouldn't have, though. But that's just me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, who knows?
Neither of us can ever know.
I'll be honest, like I'm literally just finding out about this, that he didn't direct the entire show.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, like, when I was first watching it, I didn't really notice much differences in direction or in cinematography or anything like that. So I don't know.
No, visually, I think it's still beautiful.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. Like I said, there's just small things here and there, how things are shown or how they're not shown, that I'm like, I feel like he would have done this differently.
Mm-hmm.
Because what's so great about Flanagan is he has an eye for visuals. There's so much of the time, I feel like he could adapt anything visually. Simply because there's so many stories where I'm like, this sounds stupid. I don't think visually it would work. And he's able to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a few things within the show that I think, and by the way, the show's absolutely beautiful, but there are a few things visually within the show that don't quite work. And I feel like he absolutely would have made them work. So I don't think it's his doing that make them not work.
Mm.
So yeah. But overall, I gotta, like, yeah, I'll be honest, I did really like Bly Manor.
Yes,
I did. I really did.
Yeah, I think across the board that feeling, and I also I'm gonna do a little bit of community service here and defend Peter because I feel like, and I don't think he's intending for it to come across this way, but I know that some people who would listen would think like, well, Peter is an apologist for Mike Flanagan and everything, because like, well, of course it wasn't as good because he didn't do everything. Peter isn't above criticizing anybody. And of course, Peter criticized heavily the ending of Hill House as well as the ending of Doctor Sleep. So it's not as if they're like Flanagan is above criticism here. But I think your point is well taken, that he is a far more skilled director when it comes to, I feel, the particular things that you're referring to that clearly were just not, I think, what we're used to from his work. It's interesting, I feel, and I want to maybe take this opportunity to allow you guys to help steer the conversation about where first to start unpacking this, because there's so many different directions, from the actual plot itself to the cast and the characters, as well as like this whole thing of the fact that there weren't as many quote unquote scares and how people are interpreting that and infusing that into the review. There was this ridiculous review from the Telegraph that I shared with you guys over the weekend. I don't know what the fuck happened to this critic. Can't believe he's even called himself a critic. But like, he opened his review with it saying that Bly Manor is nowhere near as scary as real life, so fuck this show. And I couldn't believe what I was reading. Remember that review,
Oh,
Peter?
God, I almost cut myself on the edge. So fucking edgy.
Did you not read that, David? You didn't read that review?
No, I did not. What the heck?
It's like if I'm gonna review, I don't know, like a football game, and I start off like, first of all, football is stupid. Sports is stupid. Why do you throw a football back and forth? It makes no sense. So anyway, let me review this football game.
This is what it said here. This is what it says here. Quote unquote. I am no horror fan. I am quite frightened enough in and by real life. Thank you. And I stumble too over the large obstacle presented by the fact that ghosts and their ilk, in all caps he says here, do not exist, therefore cannot be scary. The horror of humanity begins a long way before man's worst efforts. The supernatural doesn't even make it over the fear horizon. Halloween is the most boring time of the year. This is a real review.
It's like the dude had an axe to grind. Like, I don't, like maybe, I don't know what was going on. Maybe at the workplace, like he got.
How does this get printed though? How does this get? Clearly something's wrong with this person, and you print this?
Yeah. The second I'd read that from a review, it's like, okay, so I don't really care what you have to say.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would just click out of reading the article because that's just so stupid. So stupid. I would imagine if you're going to review something, I would at least expect you to have a base understanding of what you're reviewing. I don't know. That's just me, right? Like if someone's like, I hate books. Anyway, here's my book review. Like books are stupid. Why would I read about stories when real life is a story? It makes no sense. Here's my book review. Like, no, I'm not fucking reading your book review. Yeah. But to that whole thing of, oh, is it scary? Is it not scary? I mean, I kind of went on a bit of a tirade on our... I didn't realize it, but then when listening back, I was like, oh, I kind of went on and on and on.
You usually do.
Well...
But it's fine. It's fine. I didn't mean that in a bad way.
Fire in my heart and passion in my soul. I must speak. Your face. Okay. Our Poltergeist... to the table episode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I did kind of go into this whole thing of I don't judge.
Which, by the way, to the table, you can catch right now Poltergeist and the Sixth Sense on our feed. Go subscribe.
Oh, is Sixth Sense up?
Yes, it's up right now.
How nice. But yeah, I kind of went on and on and on about how I don't judge horror films by how scary they are, and it's weird. To me, it's sort of similar to the way people just judge films in general by how many plot holes they can find. Like, not to say that plot holes don't mean anything, but that's just such a strange way to view film and like an art form. Mm-hmm. And I can't do that. I don't know. How do you enjoy things? That's all I ask.
That's all I keep thinking to myself too. It's like, man, why can't you really you clearly didn't enjoy it, and how could you not let yourself enjoy this is how I keep thinking back to it.
Yeah. Similar. Well, what I also said is how genres really don't mean anything, like at all. Genres are just sort of categories we came up with to help compartmentalize certain stories from other stories. But at the end of the day, genre doesn't really mean anything just because something is under the
unless
label
you're competing
of horror.
for awards, and then you don't recognize
that's
your entire genre.
That's why the awards are
don't
bullshit.
Matter.
Yeah,
right.
But the genre of a film doesn't matter to me. It's a piece of art. You know, if it mostly makes me scared, I guess you could label it horror, but I kind of don't care. You know, genres are just sort of ways to help us put things into boxes, basically.
But also just interpret the show or whatever.
Yeah. But to me, when I see a horror, there are plenty of horror films that are... Well, there are plenty of films that would be under the category of horror that I don't necessarily find scary, but I just think are great films and I genuinely enjoy. And that, to me, should be the baseline category. Like, I don't know. Like, what if you see a film that's labeled a comedy and maybe it doesn't make you laugh that much, but it's a fantastic film with a great story and characters? Are you just gonna go like, wow, this was a great film, but it was labeled the genre of comedy and I didn't laugh, so 0 stars out of 5, piece of shit? Like, no. You say it's a good film. So that's that's where I'm at with Bly Manor. To me, I think it had wonderful. What's the word? Wonderful atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
I loved just it was beautifully shot, and
The aesthetic, perhaps.
yeah,
is the
the
word to use
gothic
there.
aesthetic was wonderful, and there was creepy and unsettling imagery that, again, I think was done very well. Flanagan has an eye for that kind of stuff. Some of it could have been done better, but most of it was done very, very well. So yeah, this whole but was it scary? I don't know. I don't care. Some of it I found.
And look,
It also just depends on the person, though, too. Like I remember listening to a podcast and someone said, "Oh, Hereditary was great. Don't call it horror, though. It wasn't scary." And I was like, "That's
Pitch?
literally the
Are you for real?
scariest thing I've ever watched in my life. What are you talking about?" So some people just they can handle horror way better than anyone else. So.
No. Oh God. Did they not see those naked old people? Holy shit.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing. It's it so bothers me. Yeah, but with Bly Manor though, there was a lot of creepy stuff going on, especially with the ghosts. When you see them, I'm able to I'm not covering my eyes or anything when you see them, but I'm still kind of oh God, I might not sleep tonight. Who knows?
Yeah, they're still somewhat unsettling. And then also to Peter's point, the house is great as well. If you're you're doing a reoccurring anthology series about these haunted houses. At some point you think they'd get old, but it seems as if Flanagan has an amazing eye for how to, tell these distinct stories in, I guess, similar places. But Bly Manor felt alive in a different way than Hill House felt alive, And the aesthetic of it, and I guess you could say even the production design to it was big, but it was also just large, ominous. Even in the places the kitchen, it felt like a creepy place, and I didn't want to be anywhere near it. Literally on the grounds of that place.
I will say, Hill House had one big central staircase. Bly Manor had two big central staircases. So if they go for a third one, it's gonna need to have three big central staircases.
Well, Hill
that
House
is my
had one
only
central
criteria.
Staircase had one central staircase that was used again and again, but there were other stairs that were used.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the main entrance hall area.
Gotcha.
That's where most of the ghosts and ghoulies are located. But yeah, to me, it was this. How should I put it? Bly Manor was less interested in being scary and more about creating atmosphere, which was okay, cool, great. You did a good job of it. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Well, let's get into the characters and the story itself. Instead of following a big old family this time, I would say the main character is, of course, Danny. That's her name, right?
Mm-hmm. Played by Victoria Pedretti, who's coming back. Last year in Hill House she played
Nell.
Nell, yes. Mm-hmm. And she also gets a different accent.
She does. Accents galore. That's one of the best parts. Those English accents, they give me life. I love it. What? I'm sorry.
It wasn't all just English accents, and a lot of them.
There's the Scottish.
Her accent, Danny's, is a more Southern American accent, right? At least that's what I picked up. So there's a different kind, of course, with the Scottish one. It's interesting because it's kind of the reverse of what we're used to. It's not we have Brits doing American accents, but we also have some Americans that are doing British accents here. from Henry Thomas, who's coming back also in this show, playing Uncle Henry. And he's very posh, the accent that he is. And I think I thought it was, to me anyway, to my ear, as someone who's not a Brit, not an authentic Brit by any means, I thought it was convincing enough. I thought it would. I know some people criticized his performance or his accent anyway, and I'm like, I believed it.
I adored it because this is what these fucking Brits get. They come over here to our country and take our American jobs at every fucking show, every fucking movie. You know, you see behind the scenes, and they're there with their American accents. Oh, here I am. And then once camera cuts, oh, hello, mate. Oh, how are you doing? I went to Oxford. Turn it around.
Have you
Americans
ever seen
take their jobs.
Have you ever seen the Key and Peele sketch?
Yes. It's perfect.
Oh my
it's
God,
exactly
it's so
that.
great.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. We turned that shit
and,
around.
One of those actors that comes from Britain and does American accents was actually Oliver Jackson Cohen, who played Luke. And he had last year anyway, in Hill House, he played Luke. And in this, he played Peter Quint, the Scottish accent. And you'd think that he is Scottish. He actually is not. He has an English accent. He's, I think, from London area. And this time he's doing a Scottish accent.
You see what I mean?
Noticeably.
It's like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. They just slide right in.
Well, it almost feels like witchcraft. Like, how do you turn that on and off? Like, how do you just like I honestly never understood how you can just completely and so convincingly adopt the new accent.
By the way, I think this settles the debate once and for all. The American accent is the correct accent because it is so easy to do. It is so easy for Brits to do an American accent, but British accents are so hard for Americans to do. I don't know. I feel like that means we kind of went the correct route. Listen, I criticize the United States all the time. This is a bit of my patriotism leaking in, okay?
I also think, correct me if I'm wrong, but Jamie, the character Jamie, she, I think, had an Irish accent, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Was it Irish?
Or was it something else? Because it's not traditional, it's not Scottish, or was it Scottish? I don't think it was Scottish. It's not Scottish and it's not English, but it's another one of those that's in the United Kingdom, I feel. I want to say, I mean, it stood out to me, like almost like Merida, although I guess that is Scottish too. I don't know. David, do you have any, and you want to weigh in on these accents?
Because Carla Gugino sounded very English.
She did, but she was the older Jamie.
So what? She switched accent? Okay, I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, I don't know. They all sounded good to me. I can't really tell unless someone with that accent tells me no, that was shit.
I know the same way. So I don't know. I guess people have different standards on grading accents, I guess.
Anyway. So Danny.
Yes. Well, before you get into Danny, we should say that if Hill House was about family, this Bly Manor is very much about love stories, about couples, and the different types of couples that arise.
Yeah,
it also
a lot of them.
It also does hint a little bit about chosen family instead of blood family.
Chosen family.
Mm-hmm. And that's actually something that I really liked right from the beginning of the show, is that again, even though I didn't know where the show was going, what I did like was that it was taking its time and making you care about all of these characters and making sure that you care about all of their connections.
All of them were hiding shit too.
Oh my God. Well, yeah, but I mean, I guess that's just people in general. I mean, you're right. From all of the characters, to an extent, I think are pieces of that chosen family puzzle. I mean, it is interesting to see. In most of the domestic scenes, you have Danny, Hannah, Owen, and Jamie, and those are all very different people. In the same room together, having a dynamic and all, acting kind of like, this faculty family, that's one aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, there are the more
Raising.
salacious and scandalous ones, with the uncle and the mom
Mm-hmm.
and the affair and everything. Oh, by the way, we're not going to go into spoilers, so we're not going to be prohibited by that, unless we already were.
Good.
I don't know.
No, I don't think we ever were. What I love about the beginning, well, you know what? Now let's stay with the couple thing. There's obviously many different types of couples. You have with Uncle Henry, you got the cheating kind. That's sort of three-way scorned lover stuff
Forbidden
going
love,
on.
forbidden love, adult. That covers that ground.
Yeah, forbidden love. You have toxic love with Peter and Miss
Rebecca
what was her name?
Jessel.
Miss Rebecca. Miss, what was her last
Jessel.
name?
Rebecca Jessel.
Yes.
Yes.
It's more of a toxic relationship. You have with Mrs.
Gross.
Gross. I knew it was I just remembered it was a mean name. Mrs. Gross.
Hannah
And-
Gross and Owen.
And Owen, you had sort of what's the word?
Unrequited
Yeah.
or
like,
unspoken,
not unspoken, but it'll
unconventional.
a love that will never be able to blossom, basically.
Oh,
That's more of the sad one. Like a love that could have been but never will be. You know what I mean?
right.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably a better word for it. but
Yeah.
that's what it kind of.
It's not
And-
unrequited. That's a different situation. Sorry,
Oh, okay.
That was the whole. Well, there was one with Danny's first relationship with the
Yeah.
fiance, I guess.
That was. Oh, we can get into that with Danny. Well, yeah, we'll start right there with Danny, because Danny ultimately finds true love, even if it ends up being tragic. But I really, really enjoyed her story, and
Yeah.
ultimately her and Jamie's story. Like I said, I like how in the very beginning there's just so much weird off shit going on, and the show just kind of what's the word? It doesn't address it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. It
Like,
makes you wait for the
just
answer.
stuff will happen. Like one of my favorites is it was probably the second episode where they drop the doll, because they're holding the doll that I believe is supposed to be the Lady of the Lake, and then they drop it down the chute, and then she goes down there to get the doll, and then of course you have that shot from the trailer where like someone goes, like turns and looks at her as part of the dolls. And looking at the trailer, I had assumed that was just the little girl. And, maybe she had a doll mask on, and then, she was creeping around. But, like, no, when you're watching the show, they are the only two kids that are supposed to be there. Like, who the fuck is that? And they don't even address it. Or, like, when they're playing,
Hide and seek?
what were they playing? Hide and seek.
Yeah.
And, yeah, just out of nowhere, again, from the trailer, that, like, grotesque body in the back, like, and then the little girl just shushing her, and you're like, wait, so like this girl is very familiar with this weird ghostly figure, and it's like nothing to her. Like, what are these kids hiding? What's going on here?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck?
It is. I like that mystery with the kids, because like, especially with the brother, like you can tell instantly, like, oh, he's doing everything he can to protect his sister, which is like, I love their relationship. Like, they really care about one another and all that. But then you also see him like kind of turning into a little psychopath.
Yeah,
for
it'll
some
just
reason.
randomly happen, and you're like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, but then he also tries protecting Danny, like both the kids, because they're like, because of when they first lock her up in the closet, and you're just like, what the fuck? Like, what are you guys doing? Like,
Why did they do that?
Yeah, but then like I got it right away once they open it, and like you see the footprints and all that, and I was like, oh, they were trying to protect her from like what though? Like, what the heck is gonna happen if they do?
But that also tells you, what do these kids know?
Yes.
Like, what are they hiding? which is all great. And going back to Danny, her whole thing that they start off with, they don't really talk about, is it seems as if she's running away from a ghost that's chasing her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's this ghostly figure with bright eyes that every time she looks in a mirror, she sees, and she has to cover up mirrors around her, and it's like this paranormal entity that's after her, and she's running away from it, and you're wondering, like, you know, what is this? Where did it come from? Why is it chasing her? And then it isn't again till like episode 4 maybe, or maybe 3, one of those, where you finally learn that that's her ex-fiance, in many more ways than one. Ex because he's dead, but also ex because she broke up with him right before he died. Yeah, and it goes into this whole thing of they were just close their entire life, and it was always just assumed that they would get together and get married and have this life. And it's funny because they never directly say it during the shall we say confrontation between the two, when she breaks up with him, that she's gay. And then even after that, she never breaks down and says she's gay. But you can tell everything that she's doing is because she's gay, and she's sort of running away from that, and she's scared of that, and she felt she could sort of push that aside, and eventually she would feel, I guess, straight, feel the way she was supposed to feel. But once she gets to the point where they're going to get married, she realizes it's not going to happen. And that leads, of course, to his death. And that's such a great visual. And again, this is something that Flanagan does so well.
Shocking, too, by the way, when that thing happened. It was like,
oh
fuck.
Yeah. But it's something that Flanagan does so well, where ghosts are not just ghosts, they represent something. And the horror kind of comes from that realization of what it actually is and what it means on a human level. And it's her guilt that she led to his death, and then she left him brokenhearted and dead. And that's such a cool visual where you sort of see him with the bright eyes, because that was the headlights of the truck before it hit him. And the way it's not a literal ghost necessarily haunting her, it's more of her guilt. And I really liked all of that. How you guys feel?
You go, Alexis.
No, I mean, I agree with every word of what you said. This is kind of maybe what Flanagan and his type of horrors best known for, at least at this point, is every ghost, not just being a ghost, but obviously being symbolic of a very real thing that the characters are going through, if not ghosts that were created by, some of what they would feel would be mistakes or their guilt. It was tragic. And you said that, a few minutes ago, you were saying that, this love thing with Danny ended tragically. The poor thing, it always kind of was from the very beginning, in that way. Because, I mean, it's not as if like these two are just fiancés. They grew up together. They've been best friends. And it's heartbreaking for him, because this is someone who he always thought he would be together with in a romantic way. And we didn't see the conversation they had. I guess it was assumed that she revealed her feelings, although I'm not saying it explicitly, and he kind of understood it. And I don't know. And there could have been a lot of, confusion frustration and anger colliding at the same time with him, which of course caused him to break out of the car and then, basically walking straight to his death at that point. But I guess, of course, what it means for Danny going forward, it was just too much to bear, and she just got the fuck out of that place, and she just couldn't bear to be there any longer. And that's where, we catch up with her at the beginning of the series anyway, where she's applying for the job, and then she inadvertently gets it and everything. I would wonder, though, who she was calling in the beginning. In the first episode, she was at a phone.
I assume her mom.
Yeah.
Okay, although we never really see her, I guess, right? And
No. I assume it's unimportant. It's just to entice you, why? What is she running away from, basically?
Yeah, basically, yeah. No, but it was very. She's been through a lot by the time we get with her in Bly Manor, and I wonder, before that whole episode happened with the revelation, did you guys have any suspicions? They were hinting at a relationship between her and Jamie. I think my first one was in the night when they were talking.
Really? Oh my god! The second Jamie walked into that kitchen, I was like, "Gay?"
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Oh yeah. Oh, 100%. Even the voiceover was like. Oh, it was as if they had already met. It was something like that. And I was like, oh, here we go. The second she walked in the kitchen, I'm like, I know where they are.
I heard some people say that they knew they were going to go with it. I did not know until it was the night they were all staying over when they thought that Peter Quint had attempted to break into the house.
Oh.
And they were all getting real close and chummy with each other. And
so it took them practically making out until you're like,
They seem good friends.
That was the first hint. I mean, I just didn't think it would go in that direction because...
Man, these girls are the best as friends.
I mean, forgive me, was it that obvious? I mean, it was established that she had a male... I assume that the person that was following her... Okay, I guess we'll move past that. I guess I'm an idiot when it comes to, taking a hint. All right.
I don't remember when I realized it, but... I think it might have been in the beginning. I don't know.
I mean, I don't assume people on stereotypes, Peter. I mean, it was kind of rude to think that,
Wait, why did
Jamie walked in and oh yeah, she's going to be a romantic interest because apparently it was so easy to tell that she was gay. I mean, I guess it was, but I didn't. That's not the first thought that I had when she walked into the damn kitchen.
You're accusing me of stereotype? The stereotype wasn't what she looked like or anything like that. The stereotype...
That's what I thought you just said.
No. You are putting words in my mouth, sir. Like I said earlier, this is what I was talking about, the words in my mouth. You do it quite often.
Well, you just said when she walked in,
it wasn't because any way she looked or the way she was dressed. It was the way it was shot, the way it was shown. It was the voiceover.
Oh, the voiceover?
All of that together, there was definitely heavy implication between these two characters from all of that. She wasn't just casually shown as another one of the caretakers on this lawn. She had her own specific introduction. And yeah, there was a lot going on there. So I was like,
I did not catch that.
And you know what? Okay, she was wearing overalls. So what? Well,
I mean, okay. Well, I don't know whose point you proved there. I guess you proved everybody's point. But what I did find interesting as that relationship unfolded was two things. One, Mike Flanagan seems to really like lesbians. Two, it seems to be a recurring thing. But two, that's actually really positive queer representation and something where in most things they're done horribly or they're kept in the background. This is kind of the main relationship of the series, and it was nice to see that.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, it's great. I mean, everything I look up, it's like people love and the relationship. And it is, again, like I said, it emotionally affected me by the end.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And if you're like a particularly emotional person that's very much into romance stories, like I'm not someone, because there are people, they love reading it, crying. There are people
Your
that
variety
love
is
to cry.
more death and tragedy. Yeah, we get it.
Yeah. Wait, what did you say? I can hear.
Your taste is more death and tragedy and
No. It's just I'm not like. See, there you go. You go putting words in my mouth. Ugh.
I know what you're saying. You're saying
Yes.
that that's not necessarily the thing that I am most into, but there are people who are that way and they would like this a lot.
And they obviously did. And I liked it, so yeah. Oh, I wanted to talk about something. I keep going like, okay, I'm going to remember to say this at the very beginning of the podcast, and then I forget, and then I remember like halfway through. So this is something I was meant to say at the very beginning when I was talking about my general feelings about Bly Manor. But it does kind of weave into what we're talking about now with the ghosts and all the characters. Is Mike Flanagan kind of does everything that I hate about these kind of stories on paper, at least. So
Okay.
For instance, you look at the original story of The Haunting of Hill House, and it's very, all the fears, all the ghosts, everything is implied, and it's very much left up to interpretation by the viewer whether what they read was real or not real. And a lot of that horror and a lot of that comes from the implication of, was it real, wasn't it real? What do you pull from that? The same can go from the original Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, and also for the original story of The Turning of the Screw. None of it is ever implicitly stated as this is what happened because this. It's all very psychological, and none of it is really explained at all. Again, always up for interpretation. Mike Flanagan kind of comes in, takes these properties, and says, "Fuck that." Not only are the ghosts real, they're very real. I'm going to show them to you in your face, and then I'm going to spend episodes explaining how the ghosts came to be and why they're real. And not only will I blatantly, heavy-handedly show you what the ghosts represent, but at the end, I'm going to tell you what they represent anyway. So on paper, a lot of
that's kind of everything you hate.
Yeah.
Really, when it
that's what
comes
I'm
to
saying.
any other property.
On paper, I should hate it. Like, I really, really should. But I don't. In fact, I love it. I think that's why I like Flanagan so much, is that he's able to make me like things that I didn't think I would be able to like a Shining sequel that's explicit about where the ghosts are real and you have to have the Force to interact and all that shit, and the same with Hill House and all of that. And I think a lot of it comes from the fact that visually, and that's another thing, for a lot of ghosts and horrific beings, the whole answer is to never show them fully, right? Maybe you get glimpses of them here and there, never show them fully, and never sort of reveal what is behind said monster or ghoul. And again, Mike Flanagan says, "No, fuck that. I'm gonna show you the ghost, the ghoul in full makeup glory, CGI, and then I will spend entire episodes explaining the backstory of." So
then the question becomes, what does he do specifically that makes all these things that are basically your nemesis on anything when it comes to art or film or television? How does he find a way to make you like them, whereas other places, like literally anybody else, Disney, Marvel, Star
anyone
Wars,
else that would do this shit I would hate,
kills you for it? What's the difference here?
The difference is, I think he's a good writer.
Well, I would have thought that. I would have thought maybe you liked it because he goes all in for it. You know, he's not. It's not going back and forth. Like you straight up know, like, no, this ghost is right here, right in front of your face. You could touch it if you can, or like if it lets you, whatever. Or well, this case in the show, it's dangerous to touch them. But like he doesn't go back and forth with like, oh, is this ghost real or not? With Hill House, you know, me and my sister, we mentioned that. You know, there's some parts where it might be an illusion, the ghost that they're seeing, but there's also some parts where it's straight up the ghost and all that.
And I would say perhaps before Peter gets in here, that, you know, with Flanagan, he provides the saucy, delicious substance that we crave with these kind of things, whereas other people would be far more concerned with the spectacle alone. And it's very flimsy, and it's just there for pizzazz and flash, and it doesn't really add anything to the narrative. Whereas here, it does, right? Is that kind of where you're going with this?
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of merit to what both of you are saying. Like, so, just jumping right off
in a less insulting way than just saying that he's a good writer and nobody else. Well, I mean, he is a damn good writer.
Did he freeze for you too?
You know.
Yep. It's always him.
Okay, he's back. Okay. All
I was saying, sorry, there was a what did you hear?
All I heard was insulting.
Well, I was saying there was a little bit of a connection issue. In a much less insulting way than just saying, "Oh, Flanagan's a good writer, nobody else is." Flanagan is a damn good writer. But
I was gonna add on to it, but then you guys jumped in, so I was listening to what you said. But yeah, I'll continue the writing part right now. But to what Alexa said, so for instance, it's not just take something like Dr. Sleep, for instance. It's not just going blatantly like, yeah, the ghosts are real. They are these entities that feed on them and da-da-da-da-da. He goes further, and you have these scenes like the conversation between Danny and his dad in the Overlook Hotel at the end, where you're able to do something like that you previously maybe wouldn't have been able to. He goes for it all the way. And he has something that's kind of, I would say, the Flanagan chart of horror, where there's specific ways he does it. So it starts off where you see these ghosts, and they're creepy and they're scary. And at first, you're scared in that sort of visceral level. You would be if you saw something creepy and scary like that. Then you learn that, yes, these creepy ghost things are real, which makes you go like, okay, yeah, maybe you pull back a little bit. And then he takes it the extra step further to pull back the layers of said ghost and makes you sort of empathize. And because of that empathy, it's even more terrifying than what originally just a ghost would be, right? So take, for instance, the lady in the lake. Starts out, it's like, ooh, creepy, you know, there's footprints going in. What's the little girl talks about the lady in the lake. There's all these implications. Maybe you get glimpses of her. And then eventually you see her and she's scary and you're like, ooh, you know, oh, that's scary. But then they go even further and you learn the backstory of the lady in the lake. And it's very heartbreaking and terrifying. And again, you're put in that same spot where you go, oh, fuck. Similar to Nell's story in Hill House, where, yes, the bent link lady is scary, but ultimately the terrifying aspect of it is at the very end when you realize that Nell herself is the bent neck lady. It's that kind of shit that I feel makes it work for me. And then, of course, he's really good, just a really good director and editor, and his work flows really well. It's shot really beautifully, visually, you know, it's well acted, well written. So all of that working together sort of makes me enjoy things in a way that were it done by any other person, I don't think I would enjoy as much. Finn.
So back with Danny then.
Yes. Danny Torrance.
Yes.
Oh, that is one of the things with her that I would say visually was a little off. Episode 4? Yeah, episode 4 is the last time that you see his ghost following her, right? And it was a little abrupt. It's very obvious that the reason for it is she has his glasses, she puts him in the fire, and she's kind of moving on from that, especially since right after she had her kissy kiss with Jamie, so it's sort of symbolically trying to move on. But the way it was filmed, I feel like it could have been filmed to give it more of a sense of finality for not only that ghost, but also that sort of chapter in her life. Because I feel like for a lot of people, they might have felt like, oh, so, several episodes later, they might go like, oh, I guess she's done with that whole ghost thing and her ex-fiance. Oh, okay. And I feel if they had been shot a little differently to just give it more of a sense of finality, it would have flowed better.
It was kind of weird though, that last scene, because like, she's staring at him, you see like you see the ghost and all that, and then it's just like the fire just like flames up a bit. I don't know what it did, or like the wind was blowing on the fire, sparks fly, and then it ends, and I was kind of like, oh, okay. So it was very abrupt, where I feel like
it just feels like it was dropped then entirely.
Whereas with like, I think maybe with him it would have been kind of slow paced, but then also like give you a sense of peace with Danny. There
would have been something either in the acting or where it was shot where it's a better display to the audience, like, okay, she's moving on, or she's not gonna let this haunt her anymore. And I just think it could have been slightly done better. That's how I visually. Do we want to go all the way to the end with Jamie's story, or should we save that? Because her end story is kind of the end of the whole story.
Well, I guess we could circle back to that and then go to a different couple, and right, since the whole thing was structuring these on the couples.
How did you guys feel about Miss Gross and Owen?
I actually really liked their relationship the most, just because like you were saying, like there was something there was something that could have happened, but they were both, one of them was kind of holding themselves
Fate decided otherwise.
But then she was also kind of like, at least it seemed like as if she was holding back because she couldn't let go of her past, or her last lover.
Well, from I got from it, from like episode 5, when it really delves into like, ooh, what the fuck is happening here? I think that's when I sent you guys the message where I'm like, I am Confucian. I do not know what is going on. When I was watching it. It's sort of implied that she was kind of a person that didn't take risks. Like she wasn't living for today. So maybe someone that always assumed she would have more time. And then when she didn't, that was kind of she couldn't accept that. You know what I mean? And Owen kind of represented that. I think she always sort of had a thing for him and him for her, but just kind of never did anything about it. But just always assumed like, maybe one day, we'll get to be together, it'll blossom, it'll happen. But because she was abruptly killed, that was that future was stolen from her and from Owen. And so much of her story, her spoilers, her dying, being thrown down the well and not realizing she's dead. So kind of still existing within the world of the living, kind of going in and out.
Mm-hmm.
And not understanding what exactly has happened. And episode 5, kind of the dream world, kind of her semi coming to term or understanding that. I think by the end, her story is obviously coming to terms with the fact that not only is her life over, but a possible future with Owen is over. And yeah, coming to terms with that.
Yeah, that episode in particular, I was with you. I was like, "What the fuck is happening? I don't know what's going on here." Because that wonderful effect where she would like go in and out of doors and then be transported to a different time and place, seemingly. And I guess for the first half of the episode, I was thinking to myself, "Oh, is this, I guess, her thing where?" She literally spends all her life just missing, like, these huge
chunks.
Right, these huge chunks of time. But then when we get to the end of the episode, no, she's dead. And this is kind of like the whole episode is her going deeper and deeper in her dream state, which is a reoccurring thing for a lot of these people that die on the grounds. To kind of like, they get pulled into memories of their lives, basically, and that's the whole episode happening here.
Like when that first episode started, I thought like maybe there was like a time vortex in the fucking house, and like she's actually from, I don't know, like the 1800s or some shit, or like the ghosts, or like all the people that have lived there, but like time is fucked up, so you see them but they only appear as ghosts when it's like just weird time travel fuckery going on. But she was dead.
I thought she was getting like Alzheimer's or dementia, like Owen's mom was. Yeah, well, it was because the episode before, I think that was when Owen's mom died, and like they were saying like, oh yeah, she was getting to like the last parts of dementia or something, and I thought that was happening with her. But also because the way they shot that episode of her like walking through a door and just being like in a different part of time, I saw that similar thing to another show, Castle Rock on Hulu.
Oh, yes.
I gotta be honest though, that episode on Castle Rock did it way better. I mean, different things, because like that with the woman in Castle Rock, she did have Alzheimer's and all that, but I think it's a far better episode. So.
Sissy Spacek.
What?
That was the name of the actress.
Oh, in Castle Rock?
Yeah.
Oh,
she was the original Carrie in the movie Carrie. Have you ever seen Carrie?
I haven't, actually.
Where they pour... Okay, never mind.
Yeah, I know what happens, but I never seen it. Yeah.
It's another Stephen King book turned movie.
So, just to have it pieced together... So, in terms of how that particular episode ends, and then Hannah is looking at herself dead, and then her body in the well. So, is that then confirmation that basically Hannah died right before Danny arrived?
Yeah. Yes.
And it was Peter Quint possessing Miles' body that pushed her down the well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That was insane for me, honestly. I literally went, oh,
I was screaming.
fuck.
I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, especially because like it was right when Danny gets there, and it's like, oh my god, you've been talking to a ghost this whole time. Or yeah.
But that also explains some other things, I guess, in some ways, because, I mean, so if she was the ghost this entire fucking time, I mean, good God, she really was an amazing spy then, because no one suspected at all that, I mean, and I guess, because, I mean, I think that's kind of the thing that I'm questioning is that I guess we never see anyone hug her or touch her because...
They pulled a Bruce Willis.
They would have, I think, I know, right?
Yeah.
They would have... figured it out, and then also there would be scenes, I think in the first or second episode, where she would be like at the dinner table or at the lunch table, but she wouldn't eat.
Mm-hmm.
And then she'd just take her food and she'd leave. And I wondered what that was about. And I guess subliminally, that was part of her acknowledging that she's dead and she doesn't want to reveal to everyone else, I guess. Is that
she
the
could
implication
interact
was there?
with them, though. Because remember, she laid her head on Owen's shoulders.
Right. So, but that would mean she was the only ghost that was able to do that.
Yeah, but I also think it was implied that she was the only ghost that was able to do that. Because Peter Quinn was pissed off. Like, how come you can still be semi-living? And it was because she was... Yeah, they basically explained it through Looney Tunes logic, which is... when Wile E. Coyote keeps walking over the edge of a cliff and he doesn't fall until he realizes he's over the edge and then he falls. And that's basically what it is with her. She was still somewhat human because she didn't realize she was dead.
Well, that happened with Peter Quint. Peter Quint.
Oh yeah, because he kind of
died.
Oh yeah, that was great. That was in that episode, but that was a great little, what do you call it? Like shocking moment.
Mm-hmm.
When he's just talking to them, and then out of the darkness, out of nowhere, she fucking just reaches out and grabs his neck and drags him.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, this show, like, there's a lot of just great reveals. Like, I was wondering, like, okay, what happens if, like, the ghost of the lady in the lake, like, sees them or, like, interacts with them? Like, what does she do?
You found out.
You instantly find out, just, like, chokehold.
But also...
And, like, the dude, and, like, he couldn't get out of it at all. And then, like, I love it, though. Like, he goes into the room and just walks out like nothing happened. You're just
that was also
what?
kind of creepy because he's like, and then they're like, oh my god, and then a second later he just walks out like, oh hey guys, you're still awake. I said go back to bed, and they're like, what? What happened?
It's like, do you not remember?
Did you just not remember getting choked the fuck out by this ghost?
Oh my god, that was great.
It was great. But I forgot to mention, because I loved this little review with what's her name, Miss Gross, the crack on the walls that she would see everywhere, and then they were revealed to be the crack at the bottom of the well that she's staring, her dead body staring at, probably the last thing she saw.
Mm-hmm. That was like a now moment, really, of the show.
I thought that was great. I really liked that. Yeah.
No, but to the overall point of Hannah and Owen, at least how I felt about it, that was another one of those where I was like a little late to catch on. Oh, they have a thing for each other. Until it was basically spelled out to me. Yeah, they were also hinting a little bit that she was fond of him, although clearly more than what I had suspected initially. But it is nice and then also just tragic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. Is that ever really explained? I guess is that the reason why she was the only ghost able to hold on and have some kind of physical realm to her?
Yes, at least that's the explanation that the show gave.
Okay.
Does it make much sense?
Talking about ghosts.
Yeah, ghosts don't have logic to them, so who gives a fuck? This logic worked well enough for me.
Yeah, and also just like, what a bad week for Owen. Lost his mom and then losing Hannah like literally the next day. So yeah, not fucking great.
Mm-hmm.
No, but that was a wonderful episode and a great twist with Hannah. Shall we transition to the jackass and the teacher?
It's a bit harsh.
Yeah.
Just because he's British?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I don't think it's harsh.
I don't know about the jackass.
Just because he's British.
He's Scottish.
He's Scottish.
Scottish.
I will say though, I think it was a bit thick. If you're gonna ask me, that accent was maybe too much. Actually, bring an actual Scotsman in to do that accent, but for being real, but it was a little like, I don't know. He sounded heavy. I don't know. The thing is, it was weird. Anyway, but he was mean.
Mm-hmm.
All right, he was kind of a. I mean, I think that was polite calling him a jackass. He did kill Hannah.
He did.
Did we forget
Yeah.
that? I mean, and he also killed the love of his life, drowned her.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you.
well, I thought I was getting the sense that there was some pushback,
No,
like
no.
calling him a jackass. All right.
I enjoyed their relationship because again, it's a different kind of it's toxic love.
Yeah.
And this whole thing of like her, you know, she's a career woman, she's going places, and then him, you see why he is the way he is. He's still a piece of shit, but he's a empathetic piece of shit to a certain degree.
Mm.
And he's kind of a broken person that can't help but break the people. Kind of a BoJack Horseman. Kind of
No, but BoJack's likable. I didn't find Peter Quint likable. That's just me. I'll just put it out there. Yeah.
Alexis the man hater over here. But no, I found their relationship very interesting. And again, tragic. A lot of the show is sad.
Yeah.
Well, like we just said before. What are their names? It's Jessel, Miss Jessel, and
Peter Quint
Peter
and
Quint.
Rebecca Jessel.
Rebecca Jessel. I like Miss Jessel. I'm being respectful. Quentin Jessel. Yeah, like you said, the way that he used her basically to try to escape, murdered her to not be alone. At the beginning, I think at the beginning, you kind of didn't know he was an asshole, right? I think in the very beginning, when they were first getting together. So you're like, oh, it's kind of cute. They're getting together. But then by the very quickly, he starts to reveal himself for as shitty as he is. Yeah, I enjoyed the story. I did. I don't know. How do you guys feel?
To an extent. I think it was, I mean, I get the point of it. I was just kind of getting annoyed in the middle of it.
What annoyed you?
Even more annoyed when it resulted in him being the reason why she died. It kind of annoyed at her, quite frankly, for falling for that.
Yeah.
It bugged me a little bit, but either way, it ended up going to a place where there was still something interesting with those two, I guess, in their ghost versions, because they ended up being, I guess, more prevalent in at least roping in what are the names, Miles and Flora, and it turns out that I guess they were speaking to them the entire time, at least since at the point where Danny showed up, and why they weren't as afraid of all the ghosts at that point, because they were familiar with and they were trying to help, I guess, their friends in some ways. So it does, I feel, explain a lot of their behavior almost instantaneously, because I mean, we haven't spoken much about Flora and Miles, but they were very shady the entire fucking show up until that point where things, I mean, you could chalk it up to like tragedy after tragedy, but there was a lot more going on there, especially with the sociopathic tendencies of Miles every now and then. But when it came to the relationship with Peter and Miss Jessel, it was nice. I think it may have wore out its welcome after you realize Quint was a fucking asshole. So,
But that's kind of the point too.
No, it is, and I'm not being critical of it. I guess it's just a matter of me just being annoyed by that person's presence.
Well, what I really liked about it was that they try to tell you like why, or like I don't know how to explain it. Like, you clearly see like why this relationship was toxic, like, because it was horrible. But I also I liked how they try to explain what a real relationship should be. And I'm not talking about like seeing the other people. I like that scene with what's their names again? Rebecca and Hannah talking at the chapel thing or whatever. And Hannah says, there's a difference between feeling good and feeling alive. And just kind of like that little explanation of like, this is the difference, like, of what love should be. That it's like my first thought when she said like feeling alive, and I'm like, oh yeah, that makes total sense, because like one other place you can feel alive is like at an edge of a cliff, and that's exactly what Quint did to her in the end, is like kept pushing her to the edge, and he ultimately did like just shove her down basically. And I kind of like that story, I guess, of their relationship, is that it tries to really tell you like, this is not right.
I also like what Jamie told her when he went missing, where she was like, hey, you got, like, basically kind of in a fucked up way, like, take advantage of his death. Go talk to what's his name? There's an opening now. Like, you can secure your future right now. Get that bag, basically. It's kind of insensitive in that moment, but it was the right advice, I feel.
Yeah.
It came from
Especially
a genuine
in
place.
hindsight.
It came from a place of trying to help her, not trying to kick her while she's down.
Mhm.
I think it did. It didn't come off entirely insensitive. I think obviously Jessel had her priorities in mind on other things, but I mean, we're talking about even if 87 or not. 1987 or not, which is the year that this takes place. That's the way the world works, especially for women in that occupation. So I mean, hey, get yours when you can. It was funny. I was
gonna start talking about what's his name? God, that's the thing with this huge cast. There's so many names.
Uncle Henry.
Uncle Henry. Do you guys want to talk about Uncle Henry?
Sure.
Yeah. David, you want to go?
I don't know much. There's not really much to say about Uncle Henry. Like his, again, I mean, all of them are sad, but like what his was kind of troubling is that he never really got, I mean, from what we saw, at least in the show, he never really got love at all, like the love that he had with this, what was it, his brother's wife? Yeah, with that, like, it wasn't, again, it was also toxic. It wasn't right at all. And then just kind of like him losing everything that he had, and just never really had the courage to like get the love that he kind of wants with the kids. And yeah, it was tragic, but it was interesting.
I actually really liked this story. And again, there's so many little things they set up early on that they pay off later, which are cool to see. The way that there's someone calling the house and not answering. And everyone there assumes that it's Peter Quint.
Peter Quint.
But it's actually him calling, trying to work up the nerves to finally speak to what we find out is Flora, his daughter, to talk to the kids, because the whole time you think he's just an asshole, because in the first episode when he's doing the interview with Jamie, what's her name, Danny, he comes off like a dick, and his whole thing is like, I don't care about them, fuck them kids, I don't care about them kids, unless they're dead or dying, do not call me. I'm not going to the house.
He literally said that, didn't he?
Yeah. It's like, okay, this asshole. But when you get to his episode, you understand what's going on with him. And you understand why it is he feels that way. He's not... Well, he's not an... Well, he is kind of an asshole. But he doesn't have anger or hatred or even indifference towards the kids. He has nothing but love towards the kids, especially Flora. It's just that you find out he entered into an affair with his brother's wife. Though, you know, they go into the whole thing where the brother found out and eventually cut him off from the family, said, you know, fuck you, I hate you. We're done. We will never be brothers. You know, you're not an uncle anymore. You're nothing to me. And then him and his wife trying to patch things up, who he did love. That's also what's interesting. Why I say I don't think he's a total dick, because he didn't just sleep with his brother's wife because he could or whatever. He seemed to genuinely love her. It's just one of those things where it's
and she him.
Yeah, and she him. It's one of those fucked up situations, unfortunately. And of course, you know, they end up dying
while trying to repair the mess that was made. Literally, that was the purpose of that trip, which left the kids, you know, orphans, basically.
And so he's having difficulty facing those demons, basically. And again, very on the nose, because even the brothers, like, the only one you'll be left with is yourself, and you'll understand, you know, and he's a real piece of shit, ain't he? And his guilt is the ghost of himself, basically talking to himself, like, oh yeah, you are a piece of shit. And then this is where visually I feel it could have been done better. Because the whole point, I think this is based on off another Henry James story where it's supposed to be like a smiling doppelganger. It's always smiling. And they kind of have the actor smile a lot when he's the other one. But he's not like scary. He's literally just another version of him, but just trying to smile. Like there's that one shot where he's making out with his brother's wife, and then she sort of like pulls back, and then his twin pulls in and like smiling at him all close, and it's supposed to be creepy, but it's just kind of goofy.
Yeah.
Because it's literally just the actor going like, ooh, like say cheese. And this is where I think visually they should have just gone for it a little bit more. They should have given him like prosthetic, like big ass smile, like something similar to like Jack Nicholson's Joker. You know what I mean? Where it's kind of
less goofy, more haunting.
Yeah, more haunting, more creepy,
disturbing.
Yeah,
even.
disturbing. I think they should have gone for that, because and just add that underlying level of creepiness to it, because as the way they did it there was just, I think visually just did not work at all. And again, I feel maybe if Flanagan were more involved, he might have gone that route. That's one of my, yeah.
No, I think I enjoyed a lot of Uncle Henry, especially when it's revealed about, you know, the affair he had and the guilt that he's been carrying. It made much more sense than what was initially there on the surface. You're right about that. I really love Henry Thomas. I'm happy that Mike Flanagan keeps giving him work, where a lot of the industry kind of pretends it doesn't exist anymore. And he's a really good actor, and people just forget that, it seems.
I like him. I like that he's getting work. I like that he's appearing in shit that I want to see.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Keep casting.
And also, right. And I mean, it seems as if Flanagan, should Haunting continue as an anthology series, good move. I think, you know, I thought it to be perhaps a tad bit risky, considering how a lot of these, especially since you think of, at least to me, Victoria Pedretti, Oliver Jackson Cohen, and Henry Thomas were such big figures in The Haunting of Hill House. I thought it a bit risky to bring them back and play different main characters for Bly Manor because, I mean, it's the same face. But no, I think it not only, I think, works to what a great story that was crafted with Bly Manor, but also the powerhouse of these actors that they were able to create completely different characters with the same face. But you, when you see that, you can definitely tell the difference between, you know, Nell and Danny and all the other ones for sure. But yeah, good actors, and they may be back again. And they weren't the only three that were back from Hill House. There were other ones. I know that the mom that played Olivia in Hill House was older Jamie, the one that was narrating a lot of these. I want to say that the one that played Theodora, that's Hamilton. Theodora, Theo, she was playing, what's her name? Viola,
the Lady of the Lake.
Can we dive into that real quick? What did we make of that episode? That whole background,
I loved
kind
it.
of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I
was surprised. I was gonna be like, oh god, we're doing this the entire thing. No, but it was pretty great.
What was so cool about that is episode 7 ends on that huge ass cliffhanger of her just boom grabbing Jamie, and you're like, oh fuck. And then all of episode 8 is just the backstory, right? Like she grabs her, and all of a sudden you're face to face with the Lady of the Lake. You know, she's been built up this whole series, and then right when you face her, that's when they take the time to go back and establish, okay, who is she? What is she about? Why is she here? And then, of course, it ends, you know, right back at the end of episode 7. Like, now that you know how fucked Jamie is, let's return. Let's go back to see how she's doing. But no, the fact that it was in black and white, mostly narrated, it really was mostly narration, and
yeah,
it was a good little story, you know, about these two sisters, and again the love they seemingly somewhat shared for the same man. And it was heartbreaking, and it was terrifying. Like,
yeah.
when it came to the end, where, you know, almost every night she would walk to her former bed, hoping to see her husband and her daughter, only to realize what happened, be heartbroken, and go back and repeat that night after night, year after year, for decades and centuries. And then
literally centuries.
Yeah. And then to have her memory fade and just kind of be a husk of a thing. Like, she's kind of no longer human. She's just left with these very visceral emotions of sadness and longing. And that's just everything that's left of her. That's terrifying, you know? And it's heartbreaking, and it's what I come to see when I look at these haunting works by Mike Flanagan. I really enjoyed it. I don't know, how'd you guys feel?
No, yeah, go ahead, David.
No, I really like the backstory of the Lady of the Lake, and just kind of how you like both life and death. She's just kind of being tortured almost. And I like that it was her downfall, or like her becoming like this spirit, was because she was brought she like rose to the top on her own, and it just all kind of went crumbling down very, very slowly. You know, she got this sickness. She couldn't be around her daughter like at all for so many years. She's just watching her grow up in the distance. And then when just kind of like and then just being betrayed by her sister and all that. And then I liked when you see her in the room, or like in the casket, I guess, or and they keep repeating the line of like, she sleeps, she wakes, she walks, she sleeps, she wakes. It's like, and it's so great. And then I love the part though when she just kind of went. But the thing that like kept her going was the hope that like one day the door will open and she'll see her daughter like all grown up, probably married and all that. And like I love that she puts a dress over her and she's waiting by the door like, is it gonna be today? Is it gonna be today? And then she sees her sister again opening it, and I love and you finally get the explanation of the ghosts after that. Basically, the person in the attic is her sister. The kid in the basement, I think, was it? Mm-hmm. It was just someone that she took on one of her nightly walks. And then I was actually more excited about the guy with the mask, the doctor.
Oh yeah.
I was actually more excited about that. I'm like, oh my god,
the plague doctor.
Yeah. That was just funny.
What I think is really cool comparing Bly Manor to Hill House is visually how different the ghost looks, but also there's story and character and thematic reason for that. I like how the ghosts in Bly Manor all are sort of have faded away faces and dolls. They're faceless. Which of course looks very creepy, but then when you understand why there's just this horrific implication behind it, which makes you go like, fuck, just empathizing if you were stuck in that situation that they were. God, like how terrifying that would be. And honestly, this is kind of off track, but I feel like no one ever talks about this. The concept of ghosts is terrifying, right? Like, there's a lot of people that want ghosts to be real, and I'm like, why? Why would you want ghosts to be real? Like, what if you become a ghost, and you're tied through some otherworldly void to the place you died for all of eternity? Like, that's not good. That's fucking hell. That's terrifying. Why would you want ghosts to be real? Okay. That's my spew, but yeah. Main point was about how visually different the ghosts are. I guess they think
that ghosts... I guess they think that ghosts can exist and do whatever the fuck they want and haunt for fun. I guess that's what people think would be what real life ghosts are.
That's not the way a lot of ghosts are portrayed or implied to be.
Suffering for all of time.
Yeah. Why would you? Why in the fuck would you want that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, if they ever do another one of these hauntings, I would hope that they continue that of visually distinguishing themselves from the others. Again, like I said, he didn't try to do the same thing. He definitely tried to do different.
The 1600s, right, is when this took place? This episode?
Yeah, I believe so.
I don't remember.
think it was the 1600s. Yeah, a lot of shit happened in that time that we were, following Viola. I think it was kind of demented, if not like just creepy, how her sheer will to live kept her alive long after she should have died.
Yeah. The way they try to explain like the whole gravity well thing. And not only did it keep her there, but it kept everyone who died there. It's what I like about it is it's heartbreaking, but it's very it feels like almost a fairy tale, or like, it sort of tales that are passed down sort of thing. Like, think of like La Llorona, like, oh, she was so sad, she drowned her own children, and now she walks every day, crying for her children. Mis hijos, all that. It kind of, those kinds of ghost stories, this is sort of a throwback to that. And I really like it. And the way it's told, obviously, as well.
Also, it was creepy to see, long after the manor had been abandoned, it being used to house like all of these sick and dying people when there was an outbreak, I guess, of was it Black Death?
The
bubonic plague, is that what they had? Is that what she had?
No, she had the lung.
Yeah.
As they called it.
Oh. Yeah, it was just creepy. Being reminded of how horribly people died that way in those times.
In those times.
It's just a little surreal. Well, people die horribly in every time, but I mean in that specific way. In that specific time, that's how the hospitals would be set up. Of course, we have that now with coronavirus, and that's a different, I guess, plague, if you want to call it that. In that regard, But it was definitely sad with Viola. Do we want to wrap around with Miles and Flora before we wrap up with Danny and Jamie? Any comments about those two?
Well, I already said, though, I really like their relationship. They clearly care about one another, especially the brother. He tries to protect Flora like as much as he could, and I love that bit of the episode where he was in like some boarding school or whatever, and he tried to do like just horrible things really to try to get expelled and just go back to her to protect her from, I guess, the house. And my favorite moment of the show was that scene. It was after Owen's mom's funeral and they were having dinner, and then Flora just goes, "You're not dying, like basically comforting him. That bit was honestly the best, and that little girl was an amazing actress in that moment, just because the way she explained it, like, you're not dying. Like, I felt that way, just incredibly depressed after my parents died, and I thought I could never get out of it, and just kind of like the way she dealt with their death, and it was cool, but then also kind of sad later on, because you realize what she meant by they're not really gone. It wasn't like her being like, oh, they're still with us in our hearts. No, she meant like, no, literally, we're gonna get possessed and we're good, but we're gonna be with our parents forever in memory. Like, but it's still a nice moment, especially like with all the grown-ups. They're watching her and they're just kind of like, dang, those are some wise words.
It was shocking, and also very appropriate with how Owen was feeling in that time.
Yeah,
in that particular moment anyway. You're right. But overall, the performances, especially by Flora, the actress that played Flora, was outstanding. Really, really exceptional when it came to all of it. All right. Shall we stick the landing, as they say? Peter, you want to handle this?
Sure. So, the ending, of course, is the Lady of the Lake fucking comes out of nowhere, snatches the fuck out of Jamie. Not Jamie. Danny. Keep getting them confused. Flora, in order to save Danny, tries to get the Viola's attention, and Viola, remembering her daughter, takes Flora, and everyone's basically trying to stop her, but she's the ghost Terminator. No one can stop her. So at the very last minute, Danny does that thing. It says the thing that we have been shown throughout the show they use to welcome spirits into themselves, so to speak. You basically have to offer yourself up onto the spirit, and it's something like it's you, it's me, it's us. She does that with Viola and welcomes Viola into herself, and through doing that, she instantly breaks the, I guess you could call it, curse that befell the house. And immediately when that happened, all the spirits were freed to leave. And somewhat of a happy ending. Everyone lived. Well, not everyone. That's a bad way to put it.
Everyone left alive lived, for the most part, minus one.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bad way of putting it.
Yeah, it is.
Most of everyone lived.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that died were able to move on in peace.
The uncle, came for the children. It showed after that, he decided to be their primary caregiver and actually raise them and have a relationship with them. Jamie and Danny decided to start a life together. And all while knowing that Viola, the Lady in the Lake, was inside of her, and one day it would overtake her. So, you sort of see them live their life one day at a time through the years, 1 year to 2 to 5, so on and so forth. You learn that the kids have no recollection of their time at Bly Manor, other than they used to go there during the summers. And eventually...
Honestly, that was insane. I was like, how could you forget everything that happened there?
Yeah, that part, I don't know. That left me a little bit cold. Although, I mean, good for them. I guess the way to explain it is that some things are so traumatic you forget. But also, David, you're right. Like, how the fuck could you forget that? Mm-hmm. And then also, like, so Danny kind of saved them, and now they don't even remember who she was. So there's that also.
I believe it. Kids sort of compartmentalize and put away tragic shit all the time.
Well, look at the Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah. No, I mean...
Well, that's kind of the opposite. That's the never leaving them.
Well, that's not necessarily true, but they all remembered their past differently. At least they all treated it differently. And they all were in... Some of them were in denial about what happened. Some of them chose to just move on from it.
Yeah. To a certain extent. So we come to realize, you even get to the point where they're able to get kind of married in the United States. I don't think they could get married. It was more of a...
It was a civil union.
Civil union. Right. So, all that lovey-dovey, beautiful, nice things, relationship. But it gets to the point where Viola is in fact taking over Danny, and she feels it, and she can't hold it off any longer. So one night, she just leaves back to the manor, and Jamie runs after her. She follows her back to the manor and throws herself into the lake, where Danny has become the new Lady of the Lake, and she begs her, it's you, it's me, it's us, to be pulled in with her, basically, but she refuses. And it's really this sort of tragic love story where now Danny is sort of doomed to roam the halls of Bly Manor every night she wakes up. But she's a different ghost, because she's sort of a combination of Danny and Viola. And there is this sort of... It's not even an implication, it's openly stated that no more souls were taken and trapped in the manor. She's she's Casper the Friendly Ghost, so to speak. Yeah, and then then we pull back to and then you realize, this was a story being told at a wedding party, and everyone's just like, "Fuck."
Yeah.
Like, damn. First of all, you said it would be long. We didn't know it would be 8 hours long. Second, it's sad as shit. So now I'm tired, sad, and I gotta drive home. Like, what the fuck, lady? I'm sure all of this is going through their mind, because it would be going through mine too. And it's a lot of things happen pretty quickly in that last episode. So you realize that the one telling the story is in fact Jamie, and the wedding is for Viola and her husband, and it's sad and heartbreaking. And you realize to this day Jamie still leaves the door open and the water in the tub next to her on full of water, in the hopes that some way, somehow, her lover would come back to her, to quote a Willow Whaley. Yeah, it's sad. It's very sad. I loved the ending, by the way. I thought it was great.
No, yeah, same. I kind of liked Jamie and Danny, sort of, in a way, kind of took in what they saw everyone doing and just like try to like put it into their own relationship. So with Jamie, that one day at a time thing, I think that was because of Hannah and Owen. Is that his name?
Yes.
Where it's like she wanted to take a chance with her and not just kind of like leave it off to the side, like, and leave it like a maybe, it could happen type of thing. Like, no, she went for it. And she, later on, she outright says, like, you know what? I love you, and I want to be with you. I was like, let's make this work, and all that. And then Danny does a similar thing, too, where she proposes to Jamie and going, we technically can't get married, but who gives a shit?
We can wear the rings.
Yeah.
And you're also reminded, like, oh yeah, like this is at a time where you couldn't even do that.
Yeah.
Like, fuck. Because, I mean, not to brag or anything, but me, I'm no bigot. I don't hate gay people. That's a brag, apparently. But no, but like...
No, that's fine. I mean, that's perfectly fine. I mean, it's not as if you're a Supreme Court justice bragging about getting the chance to completely annul the fact that gay marriage is allowed, you know?
To be fair, only 6 of them agree with that. Come on now.
Yeah.
Oh, we're fucked.
To be fair, that's... I know we are.
My whole thing is... Yeah, I don't know. I oftentimes forget, like, while I'm watching this, I'm just like, oh, it's a love story, right? And then I remember, like, oh yeah, that couldn't fly back then in the United States, right? Like, you couldn't even legally get married if you were to love someone in that way.
Well, if you noticed, I mean, in a lot of the stuff in their, as we see their life pass on, they really were not intimate in public with each other. There's a reason for that, I would say.
Oh, maybe. I didn't even notice that. Maybe, yeah. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't notice anything else, but you noticed that, Alexis?
I noticed a lot of things, and similarly, you didn't notice that, so we'll see. We all have different eyes.
So how did you guys
But I agree with you, the
feel?
the ending was great. The ending was great.
Mm-hmm.
No, I loved it. It was actually kind of touching. When you realize that the girl she was talking to was Flora, I was like, oh, that's nice. But also kind of sad. And it was nice to see everyone who was left and them being happy, all but Jamie. Then you have that last moment where you see a hand on her shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
So,
did you guys know it was Jamie from the beginning, or
from the beginning?
No, I didn't know,
because I didn't know who Jamie was
from
the beginning.
Yeah, true, but
no, I didn't know it was her until like the last moment possible.
oh my god,
That's me. So
But
Like when we cut back to her from the story, it was like, oh, I'm beginning to piece who this person is now. Okay. Yeah.
I was like, she does have an English accent now. But I will say, I feel as if even if Mike Flanagan had directed everything, I don't think he would have changed the ending, because as bittersweet as the ending is, it's still significantly sweet, I would say. Because the last shot is literally her, asleep, and you see sort of the hand with the wedding ring, still on the finger, sort of touching her. And I think, again, I read Mike Flanagan saying when he pitched it to the actors or the actresses, that moment was, you pull back and you see her hand, like she was there and she's always been there, basically. That even if Jamie can't see her, she's always been there with her. So yeah, I don't know. I really like the ending. I felt the feels for sure, and the whole the package as a whole really came together for me with that ending.
Yeah, agreed. How do we feel so far about how Bly Manor has been received? Getting into away from the plot of the show into more of how people are reacting to it.
Follow-ups are tough. They especially follow-ups to something that is so well received the first time around. So the first time around, you have all this time, maybe the ideas for the project have been ruminating in your mind for a long, long time. You put everything of yourself into it, and then you're like, at the end, you're like, wow, great, I accomplished it, people love it, this is awesome. Okay, great. Now quickly, immediately turn around, do a follow-up, and not only that, you have now these massive, massive expectations placed on top of you because the first one was so successful. It's tough, right? You're going to hear everywhere what we've said, which is it's really good and I enjoy it, but it's not as good as Hill House. In which case, yeah, that's fine. I'm totally okay with that. I think a lot of people, again, it's not scary, so I don't like it, which is fine, If your whole point for seeing it is to try to scare yourself and it's not doing it, okay, that's fine. But I don't know, I still feel people should not view things that way so much. If it's good, it's good regardless of how scary or not scary it is, I feel anyway. And I did feel that it was good, and I really enjoyed it, and I really, really liked it.
So just to recap of some people on in this industry for their reactions, to give you a variety of them. Chris Evangelista, film critic for /film, was pretty much along the lines about how we covered this show, which is really good follow-up, not as good as Hill House for reasons. He actually, in his review, I read that he had a your similar issue, Peter, about how they changed the line from Hill House about in Hill House you walk alone. They changed that to in Hill House you walk together. How he wasn't very happy with that ending with Hill House. Patrick Dougal, who is of Disney social media variety, but then also does work, I think, with some television shows that he's involved with, was saying his reaction, and I noticed this a lot on Twitter, was, I want more of these haunting anthology series. It's like American Horror Story, but good. A lot of shade being thrown at American Horror Story right there. And then, of course, we saved the best for last. Miss Grace Randolph is someone we'd like to, mention on the shows here. And she had a interesting reaction where she used she was portraying the reviews for Bly Manor as being bad, where I mean they weren't as good as Hill House's reviews, and it was showing fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, but she still labeled them as horrible reviews. And then she brought up the low box office receipts of Dr. Sleep, and she used that as evidence to say, Mike Flanagan, take a hint, your work is too slow and not scary enough.
She, like I told you,
and that pissed me off.
Her whole thing, I guarantee you the reviews she was talking about weren't the reviewers. She was talking about the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Her whole thing, again, this is why she's so fascinating, is it's all about sort of winning. It's all about the business. It's all about the box office, right? Your quality is determined by box office. If you can't make money, then you are doing something wrong and you need to change it up. Which is so weird to me because, like, especially because she's like a lover of old film. And I guarantee you there's so many old films she loves that probably made zero money at the box office, but she like adores, right? Like, I don't, she
and
has
she
such
said,
a business centric.
And to be clear, on her, from what I gather on that review, she enjoyed Hill House. She enjoyed Bly Manor. I believe she also really enjoyed Dr. Sleep.
No, I don't think she liked Dr. Sleep.
Maybe not that one, but she did like Bly Manor and Hill House.
What does she mean by his work is slow? Like, he's not putting a lot of stuff out, or like his stories?
I think she was referring to the pacing in his stories is too slow.
Okay, because
it's too slow and it's not scary enough. Is what her argument, that most of the masses are that's what they're calling for, things that Flanagan is not providing. It's annoying. It's aggravating, and I hate that she perpetuates that. But you know what I hate more is I can't help but feel in the back of my mind she might have a point in that most people might agree with her when she says that.
I mean,
agree with her. I mean, the masses might agree that what they look for in works like a Bly Manor and a Dr. Sleep is to be scared every single minute.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when I say that, my worst fear is that I think what gets me upset when she said that is she may have a point in that the masses agree with her and that they demand to be scared and for not to like for the work. And Peter has made the point that it doesn't matter what genre you're in. Yeah. Audiences, large audiences, general audiences are very unforgiving to a very slowly paced anything, even if it's a slow burn. People have this weird thing where if you are moving at a slow snail pace or even at a moderately slow pace, they use that as an example of why your work, they use it actually as a criticism.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was slow, so it wasn't as good as it should have been. Just because it was slow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, modern audiences don't, for the most part, they're not cool with slow movies.
I mean, I've used that before. Like, it felt slow paced. A movie felt slow paced. But when I mean that like
right.
And
so have I, and so has Peter. But I think that we have reasons for having issues with the pacing because it comes at the detriment of something else in the piece of work. What I'm saying is, just if audiences detect that something is moving slow, it doesn't matter if it's for a story reason. It doesn't matter if it pays off in the end. If they see something slow, they get bored and they lash out. It doesn't matter what the reason is. Am I wrong saying that? I feel like that's kind of what most audiences react in when they feel as if something is slow. Oh, it doesn't matter what reason it is. It's bad.
No, I agree. That's exactly what they think.
To a certain extent, I would say audiences are not forgiving towards slow films.
They're also very unforgiving, perhaps more so than a comedy having no laughs, as you mentioned before, Peter. But remember the whole situation with Mother a few years ago? They're very, and Hereditary also, which was so weird. They're very unforgiving to horror films that are not scary enough. Because Hereditary got a horrible cinema score rating a few years ago. And it also boggled my mind because you didn't think that was scary? And then, of course, the whole Mother situation.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, general audiences, we usually spend a lot more time talking about them in our podcast, but because there have been no movies this year, there's been next to no reason to even mention them. But that's kind of, you right or wrong, that's just kind of what the tastes are. And I guess my concern is, well, and then also to add on with what Grace was saying, she was saying that Netflix should really take creative control from Flanagan if they want to greenlight a third season, because he can't be trusted anymore with Hill.
Well, yeah, to her,
that's what she's
like I said, everything is about the money. I guess to a certain, I don't know. Again, it's just weird to me because she
says that he requires supervision.
Well, yeah, to make it sure it's scary. But again, I think the opposite is probably necessary. I think he needs more involvement, not less. But also, yeah, as I've said before, her whole thing is always about the business side of it. And it doesn't matter how good or bad a film is. If it's successful, that's good, and they should keep pursuing that. And if it's not successful, they shouldn't. Which, again, if you're a business exec, I understand why you would think that way. But if you're just like a fan of movies, I just want good films. I don't know.
Right. So I guess, and this is, I think, an uncomfortable question to ask. Should we expect Netflix to renew this?
No.
Considering how things are with the pandemic, no?
I wouldn't.
Are you saying it's not, or you're not really hoping anymore?
I would like to see a third go around, but I just don't think it will get one.
I think we all would want one, right?
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Mm. I don't know. I don't think we're gonna get one anytime soon, but maybe like way later on. I don't know, because I feel like they got something with what's his name, the writer, Mike Flanagan. Yeah.
Well, isn't he still working with Netflix on something else?
Yeah, he's made a bunch of stuff for Netflix, though, right? Hasn't he?
Right, he has. But
so
Peter mentioned he was filming something right now. Do we know if that's for Netflix?
It probably is.
I don't know, but like I feel like he has something good with Netflix, and Netflix definitely has something good with him. I don't think we'll be seeing another Haunting show in a while, but
I have to say this was not the responses I was expecting. I was expecting like something a little bit more optimistic with at least one more season with Haunting. At least for me, if anything, we would get one more, and then that would be it, because Netflix seems to throw away their shows after 3 seasons for some, unless it's bringing in subscribers every year.
That's the thing. When it comes to Netflix, it's not good enough to maintain your audience. You have to expand it.
Because it's a subscription service, and that's the bottom line, is your show is valuable not just on how popular it is, but on how many new subscribers it brings in, which is a different calculus than most TV shows anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's completely different than how it used to be done on cable, right? If you were popular, great, you keep going. You want to maintain that popularity. Here, if you have one season of the biggest show in the world and everyone, subscribes because of it, but then the second season rolls around and you maintain, but you don't add any new subscribers, canceled. Boom. Finished. And I don't think Bly Manor added any new subscribers.
So. I mean, that would be one thing if it were by itself, but you also have to factor in the pandemic. Netflix did announce that they were spending so much more money, but their priorities are just not with this. And they also unrenewed a bunch of shows that were previously scheduled to come back, but because of COVID, they were just canceled and left in the dust. And it seems as if that may be where we are with Bly Manor. Wow, this wasn't how I planned to end the show. Kind of like, well, that was nice, but it's canceled. But maybe it is better to be safe than sorry than just expect the worst, because, I mean, I don't know why would we expect the third season, with all the stuff that Netflix has been kind of like throwing out the window, if we're being real here. So it wouldn't be surprising in the least, but it would be sad because it is a really great show. I think easily the best horror television series I've ever seen, and yet we are where we are. Oh boy. But in any case, congratulations to the cast and crew on another job well done. Ultimately, it was, I think, a success from a quality perspective, and we definitely encourage you all to watch The Haunting of Bly Manor for your horror-themed month. Before we leave you, we want to remind you of what we have coming up for the rest of October. Cannot believe we're nearing the end of the month already. It seems as if we just begun, but we have one more to go with our bootacular, as Peter has called it. We have an audio commentary for Dr. Sleep coming up the next week. And then onto the table, we have The Orphanage, which was a Guillermo del Toro produced film directed by J.A. Bayona, a Spanish language film from what I'm told. And we also, of course, have our current reviews of The Sixth Sense and Poltergeist, both of which I just saw this month. And I think we had wonderful conversations on those, as well as our previous review of The Haunting of Hill House, and so on and so forth. I will say, real quick, I also want to give people in advance about the stuff that we're planning for November. I wasn't consulted, but I will say from what Kyle Lira told me, is in November, Fantasy Fair is going to have a Muppet-themed month, covering films from The Muppet Movie, Muppet Treasure Island, Muppet Take Manhattan, The Muppets, and Muppets Most Wanted are among the films that will be covered. So, I mean, I love the Muppets, so I can't wait to hear that content. And then for Red Spotlight, we will be doing two things. It is our Guillermo del Toro themed month. Peter is finalizing the list of entries of which films of the work of the directed works of Guillermo del Toro that will be for our annual November deep dive into a filmmaker, how we did last year with the Scorsese Files. And then also, to keep a little bit of TV in the program, we'll be reviewing The Good Place by Michael Shore, which aired on NBC and actually finished airing earlier this year. We'll be doing two podcasts covering 2 seasons each. I will say this is one of those where David and Peter had been watching the show for a while. I recently watched it, and you'll get to hear all of our thoughts coming up in November. So a lot of content. A reminder, Red Spotlight podcasts drop every Sunday, sometimes on Thursdays, and Fantasy Fair on Friday, and To the Table on Wednesday. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, David. Thank you, Peter, and we'll catch you under the spotlight next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.